I want to talk now about INOs. Lots and lots of discussion in the community. We've got clarity now. And I think the huge benefit here is we've learned so much, which is amazing. I know Pluto from HashPack is listening right now. Pluto, if you want to hop up and chat a bit, by all means, feel free. Not to put you on the spot at all, but basically, HashPack has raised over $2 million, I believe, with their INO for their pack token. And this is big. Like if we just take that headline alone, that's a really big signal about this ecosystem, right? We've got a startup that was able to raise $2 million by themselves with their community in the Hedera ecosystem. And really, like everything else aside, that's just a great headline to see. And I think that that's ultimately what will stand after all the dust settles. And again, I think that, for people that say, there's no liquidity here, or that, that the NFT ecosystem, the DeFi ecosystem on Hedera isn't on the up and up, this is something to push back with. It's like, hey, we did have, a massive fundraising effort by a project in our ecosystem. And it's not just HashPack too. We've had a bunch of different INOs happen. We had one for, well, not an INO, or I guess it was technically an INO, but for Citadel wallet on Headstarter, right? For that hardware wallet. So we're seeing these types of efforts happen. And I think that they are so important when we talk about funding in this ecosystem. Like this is literally the dream, right? Community funded startup projects. Like, this stuff is amazing. But as you kind of peel back the layers and as you get into it, of course, the old saying of technology, move fast and break things. There's the break things part as well. And so I think that we have to bring in a little context for what this is all about, and kind of pull back a little bit and go, when we have like a breakthrough mint on Hedera. And what I mean by that is, I'll go back. This is for the gray hairs in the ecosystem, the OGs. I think about the original Hangry Barboons mint. I think about the original HGraph Punks mint. I think about a bunch of these early mints that really went horrible, right? There's a lot of problems with them, and stuff just broke. But it's not new to me. I think anyone who's been in the technology industry for a while understands that, like, all the time you'll have whether it's Web3 or not, you'll have a company launch a product. And if it's good, guess what? Their servers are going down. They're having scaling issues. Great example is over a year ago, the launch of ChatGPT. That was like horrible. It's like their systems weren't scaling. People weren't able to send messages. It was a horrible user experience when it got started. And I think that's there's a funny saying. I can't remember who said it, but like, if you want to find out if you have product market fit as a software company, just turn off your servers and see what happens. And that's kind of what happens in the startup industry. You kind of find that out. And what I'm getting at is, this is just kind of what scaling looks like, is if a network is a muscle, muscles grow because they just break down, they hurt. You cause damage, and then the muscle regrows and repairs itself stronger, right? And so that's kind of how a network functions. And sometimes it is a failure on hardware. Sometimes it's a failure on software. I'd say that mostly it's just people making mistakes because things are crazy. I can't tell you how many times I've personally been a part of, major launches or all sorts of different things where in the heat of the moment, you just make decisions and stuff just doesn't end up working out, and mistakes are made. And it turns out it had nothing to do with the technology. It was just a mistake that was made. And also too, it's like that stuff just happens. That's the reality of moving fast and breaking things. That's what people want. That's why we're in Web3. And so I think that the outlying variable then is also, I think that communications is also really important. And I think that, it's easy to find flaws in how a startup or project attempts to do something really big and then fails in that moment. It's really easy to kind of like, pick it apart in the moment, but again, we pull back, and kind of what I was saying is like, what's the headline out of all this? It's, a startup in Hedera raised $2 million. It's like, let's add it to the pile. I think that that's overall, if that's the takeaway, and as a community, we're really hoping to send a signal to the broader industry that this ecosystem is thriving and ready for more. I say we, take that and run with it. I think that that's fantastic. I think that what the real issue boiled down to, and I know Pluto's listening, is like, the tweet that gets sent that's like, Hedera's on its knees or whatever. I saw that tweet and I was like, it's like, it's not true. But the thing is like, think about how crazy that moment is. You're running this giant mint and just like stuff's going crazy. And it's like, stuff just happens in the moment. Like, that's the reality of it. You see stuff like that unfold. If you're familiar with software development, if you're familiar with these types of things, it's like, again, the break things part of move fast and break things. It is what it is. And after the fact, I think that stuff's handled really well. Clean things up. There was a really, really great postmortem that broke down all the information. HashPack just basically owned all that stuff. It's just what you got to do. It's like, hey, we messed up. It wasn't the experience we wanted to provide. And it is what it is, and there's huge numbers. I mean, there was like 3 million requests that were made in the wallet. Something really great that May said, on a Spaces yesterday that I was on, was that, there's another aspect to this that we forget about, is like, there are improvements every time. And a complaint previously with mints was like the wallet wasn't working properly and stuff was going down. It's like, this time around, there was a huge improvement. The wallet itself was like rock solid. So it was this mixture that I saw. Like, I was obviously someone that was participating in the mint. I was in the chaos. And that was something I kind of, during the mint, I was like, oh, the wallet's like rock stable. Like, this is great. Like, that was one thing I noticed during it. And I was like, okay, they fixed that. Obviously, that's fantastic. They got a new like kind of scaling solution. So it's like, I think that if you're going to be an early adopter into technology, it's like when you have big moments like this, it's like for sure stuff will go wrong. But like, there are things that are improved along the way. And when you get over it, when you get through it, when the thing's done, it's like, sure, it didn't go perfect, but it happened. And you get the beautiful headline from it. So I think that all in all, it's like, I think HashPack is just another one of these projects that attempts to shoot for deep space and hit the moon on the way, and I just think that's what it takes. You gotta applaud that. And things are just going to be a little bit messy sometimes. That's just the reality of it. The secret here in this space is not to make the best decisions possible, right? It's to make as many decisions as quickly as possible. That's really the key that a lot of people don't understand when you're doing things like this. Is it's really you just don't have the bandwidth, you don't have the manpower, you don't have the resources to just make every decision perfect. It's like you have to make as many decisions as quickly as possible and not worry so much about the quality of those decisions. They just have to be made to get the thing done. And thing got done, and it ended up working out. And I think that the Postmortem did a good job of breaking it down. To me, it just looked like it appeared as a crazy, energetic attempt by a startup in the technology industry. I see it all the time. I love it. And that's how networks scale. And that kind of brings me to like, you know, the part of this, which is, you know, where mirror nodes come into the conversation. And I've got a unique perspective on this. I work at Hgraph, a mirror node provider in the ecosystem. And I think that another aspect of this is, and something that I've been quite frankly pretty worried about, is the lack of education and understanding of like what mirror nodes are and why they're important, and, you know, what resources are required to make a healthy ecosystem. I just don't think people knew about that stuff. I don't think people really understood like what a mirror node was versus a consensus node. Right. And so I think that is something where situations like this kind of delight me in a way, where I go, everybody's talking about mirror nodes right now. And it feels like over a 48-hour period, the community has gotten a massive crash course in what a mirror node is and what it's all about. And I think that that's something that I always try to focus on. Again, I brought up those examples of previous big events in the Hedera ecosystem that either like kind of go wrong or break or something happens or whatever, and people get upset and freak out or whatever. Every time those things happen, I just always notice, you know, the curtain being pulled back and new information being exposed, people learning things very rapidly. I find that the fastest way to learn things in this space is like when things go wrong. You know, as a community, it's like that's generally when most of the learning happens. So I think, you know, actually real quick too, something was just posted yesterday that I want to bring people's attention to, which was the at Hadera Devs X account posted a really, really great educational thread on what mirror nodes are and how they work. That's just fantastic. And again, that's a direct result of stuff going wrong with the HashPack INO, right? That's the silver lining to all this, is like when you have a startup do bold things, whether it works or not, to whatever degree, it just brings people together and it causes like this influx of information sharing and knowledge and stuff like that. Like scaling is not pretty. Like scaling technology, scaling a network, scaling a community, like it is not easy. It's not pretty. It's very messy. And it just has to get done. And it's like, this is what it looks like. You know, a lot of times problems don't get fixed if they aren't experienced. It's very rare that a major problem will kind of like be seen down the road and be fixed before it happens. It's like, no, it has to happen. Feels like a dozen times before it gets fixed. But if it doesn't happen, if people don't stop doing bold things and venturing out and being fearless in those ways, you know, I don't think we're going to scale if we don't do those things. So just got to say, like, just, you know, before I wrap up my thoughts on the INO stuff, I mean, shout out to the HashPack team. It's not easy doing stuff like this, especially when, you know, you have people that are upset, because that's one thing that makes this different than a lot of things. I know that I'm drawing a lot of similarities between like, oh, this is just a similar thing to like a bunch of other stuff that happens in the tech industry. But the one thing that does make it different is in Web3 is there's a lot of money, right? People want to buy something to make more money. It's very speculative. There's a lot of greed, a lot of bad qualities to it, you know, and I think that that's also something new that the technology industry is learning to deal with, of like, oh, it's not, people aren't just upset that, you know, they weren't able to use the product. They're upset because they missed out on some, you know, generational wealth or something like that. So there's also that aspect, as well, you know? So I think all in all, huge shout out to HashPack. I encourage them to continue doing crazy stuff that might break things. I think that's I think that the worst outcome that could happen from this, to like, just being honest, the worst outcome that could happen from this is folks like HashPack becoming more reluctant on doing crazy stuff like this and decreasing their appetite for risk. Because that's what happens as startups grow and as they experience stuff like this, is their appetite for risk and adventure starts to shrink because this stuff is hard, and I want to give a message out to HashPack and other, all the wallets out there, Blade, Kabila, Galaxy, Drop, and then, other people doing INOs, right? We got an INO coming from Earthlings. Or no, they did their INO yesterday. I missed it. I was in meetings. So like, there's another INO that happened. I want to encourage those startups, especially at this early phase in the industry. It's like, just keep being bold, keep doing crazy stuff, keep that big appetite for risk, continue breaking stuff. It's what it takes, and people will be upset. But it is what it is. And we can split hairs all day about what could have been done or what, whatever. But at the end of the day, the solution is, the solution turns out to be something really easy. It was just a rate limit on the mirror node service they're using. The information that HashPack was trying to retrieve from the mirror nodes, right? The consensus nodes, are the ones that create transactions, move things through the network. The mirror nodes hold all that data. HashPack was trying to get that data of like token balances and how many have been sold and all these types of things. And it's like they were sending, 2,000-3,000 requests, per second to these mirror nodes, and they were just being capped. So that's really what it turned out to be. It was like, decisions in the moment had to be made incredibly quickly. And one of those decisions was not great, and it happens, but that's all it is like, that's the learning. You move forward, you do it again. And the beauty of it too, is because it's done so in Web3, it's done transparently. Like May was on a Spaces yesterday. It's like, it's not just something that HashPack learned. It's something that everybody learned. And I think that is why Web3 is so great. And why it's a little bit of an evolving beyond just Web 2 is like, once one person learns, kind of like everybody learns. And so working at a mirror node provider, I'm like, this is just things to watch, understand, and just get better together. If one person, experiences something like this, it's like, it's on us to all, try to implement that solution, try to avoid it from happening, educate each other. That's what's happening, which is great. And I like to see it. But there is a lot of noise. I do want to say that, I think that, there's a pattern that I see with certain people in the ecosystem, largely, people that have been in Hedera for a long time. And I'll give everyone here like a quick tip to kind of see, whether someone's feedback is worth listening to. And something I've found in the past is when stuff like this happens, generally I find that there are certain people that talk about themselves in a weird way while these things are happening, and kind of make things about them in a little bit, in a way. And there's these people in every ecosystem. I'm not talking about Hedera specifically. Like, I was in a band, right? I'm talking about the music industry. I'm talking about the tech industry more broadly. In my experience over the years that I've been, in business and like creative and stuff like that, it's like, I do find that I see people that when things like this happen, use it as an opportunity to talk about themselves versus contribute to the larger conversation. And I kind of find that is the line for me, right? I think that more than not is so many people contributing to the conversation, trying to figure out like what went wrong, going into like a little bit of a detective mode, figuring things out. And I love to see that. I love to see that because it starts out a little heated, right? But now where we're at is like, okay, we've all got new info. We're trying stuff. And then I find that sometimes, there's people that just kind of make it about themselves. And that's the challenge, I think, sometimes. So I try to ignore those people because it's not about them. It's about the community overcoming challenges together. And, it's and there's always somebody taking the brunt of that messed up, right? Somebody messed up, something went wrong, someone's taking the heat. That's the role they're playing. The role the community's playing is playing detective, trying to figure out what happened. And then, just ignore people that are kind of in their own corner doing their own thing. I wouldn't worry too much about that. And I'd say, just to move before we just move on, is like the big picture here is this. In general, NFT mints on Hedera have been like horrible. And in the recent months and recent year even, is they've been fantastic, right? So if we, like, everyone, the meme is like zoom out, right? So I want people to like zoom out here, right? Zoom out from HashPack, zoom out from Earthlings, zoom out from Citadel Wallet, zoom out and really kind of go, a couple of years ago, what was it like minting an NFT versus now? Night and day, absolutely night and day. And I think that's really the takeaway for me is the stuff just keeps getting better, and so we can't forget the break things part of move fast and break things. And it's funny too, because this is happening on the like enterprise network, right? It's like, we're the adults in the room. I think we got to stop saying we're the adults in the room. I always kind of cringe when someone on Hedera is like, we're the adults in the room. It's like, well, try scrolling Hedera Twitter. It's like, we're not exactly that. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I think that's this pathway to decentralization, right? I see Christian Hasker this morning with like a new profile picture that's like a doodle from a meme coin and all that kind of stuff. It's like the executives at Hedera and related organizations, as they become more degen-pilled, it contributes to our pathway to decentralization. That's my thesis. Let me see here. Oh yeah, this was a great tweet. I want to share this really quick with people.